Zack Ryder wiped down the espresso machine, his mind wandering to anywhere but the monotonous Seattle coffee shop. The clock ticked painfully slow, each second stretching into eternity. As the last customer left, he sighed, tossing the rag aside. "Another thrilling day in paradise," he muttered, untying his apron. The neon closed sign flickered to life as Zack stepped out into the misty evening. He breathed in the damp air, relishing the moment of freedom. A walk in the park seemed like a good way to clear his head. Zack meandered down the quiet path, hands stuffed in his pockets. The streetlights cast an eerie glow through the fog. He was just considering grabbing a late dinner when a blinding flash erupted around him. For a moment, Zack thought he'd been struck by lightning. His body tingled, every hair standing on end. Then the world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of swirling colors. When the dizziness subsided, Zack found himself standing in an enormous, opulent hall. Hundreds of bizarre creatures milled about, their forms defying description. Some had multiple limbs, others sported scales or feathers. A few seemed to be made entirely of light or shadow. "What the hell?" Zack whispered, his eyes wide. A booming voice echoed through the chamber, silencing the crowd. "Esteemed guests of the Galactic Empire, welcome to Zenith." Zack's gaze was drawn to a towering figure on a crystalline throne. The being had iridescent scales that shimmered with every movement of its 6 arms. A crown of pulsing energy hovered above its elongated head. "I am Emperor Zoran," the creature continued. "You have been summoned here for a momentous occasion. As you know, our empire faces a dire threat. Our bloodline weakens with each generation. To ensure our survival, I have made an unprecedented decision." The Emperor's multifaceted eyes swept across the room. "One of you will have the honor of marrying one of my daughters. The chosen suitor will become heir to the Galactic Empire." An excited murmur rippled through the crowd. Zack's mind reeled, trying to process the absurdity of the situation. He pinched himself, certain he must be dreaming. "Ouch," he hissed. "Not a dream, then." Emperor Zoran gestured dramatically. "Behold, my beloved daughters." 4 figures glided forward, and Zack's breath caught in his throat. They were, without a doubt, the most beautiful women he'd ever seen. Their skin was a mesmerizing shade of emerald green, smooth and flawless. Delicate features were accentuated by high cheekbones and full, shapely lips. But it was their eyes that truly captivated him, large, almond-shaped, and filled with an otherworldly radiance. "I present Princess Astra, Princess Lunara, Princess Nova, and Princess Celesta," Zoran announced. Zack couldn't tear his gaze away. While their anatomy was essentially human, there was an undeniable alien quality to their beauty. It was exotic, ethereal, and utterly enchanting. The assembled suitors began to approach the princesses. Zack watched in confusion as, one by one, they recoiled in horror. Looks of disgust twisted their alien features. "Revolting! Hideous creatures! I'd rather mate with a Snarlax beast." The insults flew thick and fast. Zack glanced back at the princesses, baffled. How could anyone find them repulsive? Then it hit him. By the standards of this bizarre gathering, the daughter's human-like appearance must be considered grotesque. Zack's heart went out to the 4 women. He saw the pain in their eyes, poorly masked behind regal facades. Before he could stop himself, he was moving forward. "Hi there," he said, flashing a warm smile at the princess closest to him. Astra, if he remembered correctly. "I'm Zack. It looks like the stars are playing hooky today. They've all gathered in your eyes instead." Astra's eyes widened in shock. A deeper emerald hue bloomed across her cheeks. You're speaking to me?" she asked, her voice melodious and hesitant. Zack nodded. "Of course. I'd be crazy not to want to talk to the most beautiful woman in the room." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Emperor Zoran leaned forward on his throne, all 6 eyes focused intently on Zack. You find my daughter attractive? The Emperor asked, his tone a mix of disbelief and hope. Zack turned, suddenly aware of the attention. Yes, your imperialness? They're all gorgeous. I mean, where I come from, green skin isn't exactly the norm, but wow, just wow. Nova, the youngest princess, stepped closer. You're from Earth, aren't you? She asked, a hint of fear in her voice. We've heard stories. Lunara nodded vigorously. They say humans are savage beasts who devour anything in their path. And that you reproduce through your tongues, Celesta added, looking both fascinated and horrified. Zack couldn't help but laugh. I promise I'm not going to eat anyone. As for the tongue thing, well, that's complicated. The princesses exchanged confused glances. Astra, emboldened by Zack's friendly demeanor, spoke up. But it's true that humans have no proper mating cycles? That you're constantly in heat? Zack rubbed the back of his neck, feeling a blush creep up. We, don't really talk about that in public where I'm from, but I can assure you, we're not sex-crazed maniacs, usually. A tense silence fell over the hall. Emperor Zoran's voice cut through it like a knife. Human, approach the throne. Zack swallowed hard and walked forward, acutely aware of the hostile stares from the alien suitors. He stopped before the imposing figure of the Emperor, trying not to fidget. You are an unexpected variable, Zoran mused. Tell me, Earthling, what is your name and purpose here? Zack Ryder, Your Majesty, and honestly, I have no idea how I got here. One minute I'm walking in a park in Seattle, the next I'm here. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Curious, very curious indeed. You claim to find my daughters beautiful, yet every other being here sees only repulsiveness. Explain. Zack took a deep breath. Where I come from, your daughters would be considered incredibly attractive. The green skin is different, sure, but everything else? Stunning. I don't know what these other guys are seeing, but I think they're out of their minds. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Zoran leaned back, stroking his chin with one hand while the others tapped rhythmically on the throne's arms. Perhaps, the Emperor said slowly, this is the solution we've been seeking. A fresh perspective. New blood. He stood suddenly, his voice booming. The contest continues, but now our human guest shall also be considered a potential suitor. Chaos erupted. Alien dignitaries shouted protests while others simply teleported away in disgust. Zack found himself at the center of a storm of attention. As the commotion raged, Astra sidled up beside him. Thank you, she whispered. No one has ever looked at us that way before. It's nice. Zack grinned. Trust me, the pleasure's all mine. So, any chance you can show me where a guy can get a drink around here? I have a feeling I'm going to need one. Astra's laughter was like tinkling crystals. Follow me, Zack of Earth. I believe this is the beginning of a very interesting friendship. As they slipped away from the pandemonium, Zack couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. Sure, he'd been abducted by aliens and thrust into some insane galactic bachelor contest. But with 4 gorgeous princesses by his side, maybe the universe had finally decided to cut him a break. Little did he know, the true challenges and adventures were only just beginning. As the initial shock of the announcement wore off, Zack found himself whisked away to a private chamber adjacent to the Great Hall. The 4 princesses accompanied him, their movements graceful despite the clear nervousness in their eyes. So, Zack said, trying to break the tension, this is usually the part where I'd offer to buy you ladies a drink, but I'm guessing my Earth money isn't going to cut it here. Lunara tilted her head, curiosity overcoming her apprehension. You use physical currency? How quaint. Hey now, Zack raised his hands in mock defense. No need to get personal. We can't all be fancy space princesses with, what, thought-based banking? Nova giggled, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Close enough. Though I must admit the idea of carrying bits of metal and paper to exchange for goods is rather charming. Zack grinned, relaxing a bit. Glad you find our primitive ways endearing. So, not to be blunt, but what exactly is going on here? One minute I'm slinging lattes, the next I'm in some intergalactic version of The Bachelor. The princesses exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Astra spoke up. Our father, the Emperor, is desperate, she explained, her voice tinged with sadness. The royal bloodline has been weakening for generations. Without an infusion of new genetic material, our entire species faces extinction. Celesta nodded solemnly. We've tried breeding programs with other races, but the results have been less than ideal. Zack's eyebrows shot up. Whoa, breeding programs? Look, I'm flattered and all, but I'm not sure I'm ready to be some kind of galactic stud horse. Nova blushed deeply, her skin darkening to a rich forest green. It's not quite like that. The hope is that by finding suitable mates for us, we can produce heirs strong enough to lead the Empire into a new era. And you're okay with this? Zack asked, genuinely curious. Being married off to some random alien dude for the good of the Empire. The princesses fell silent, exchanging uncomfortable looks. It was Lunara who finally answered, her voice barely above a whisper. We don't have much choice. It's our duty to the Empire, to our people. But she trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Zack's heart went out to them, trapped by duty and expectation, facing a loveless marriage to someone who found them repulsive. It was like something out of a tragic fairy tale. Well, he said, forcing cheerfulness into his voice. Lucky for you, ladies. The best-looking guy in the galaxy just dropped in, even if I am a primitive earthling. That got a laugh out of them, easing some of the tension in the room. Astra stepped closer, her eyes sparkling with a mix of hope and trepidation. You truly don't find us revolting? She asked softly. Zack met her gaze, his voice sincere. Astra, you and your sisters are quite possibly the most beautiful women I've ever seen. And trust me, I've watched a lot of Miss Universe pageants. The princess blinked in confusion. Miss Universe? Ah, Earth thing. Never mind. Point is, you're gorgeous. All of you. A comfortable silence fell over the group. Then, almost imperceptibly, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Zack became acutely aware of how close Astra was standing, the sweet, alien scent of her skin. Perhaps, Astra said, her voice husky, we should get to know each other better, for the good of the Empire, of course. Zack's mouth went dry. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, very diplomatic. Nova giggled again, the sound sending shivers down Zack's spine. Oh my, I believe our Earth friend is experiencing an elevated heart rate. How fascinating. We should study this phenomenon more closely, Lunara added, a mischievous glint in her eye. Celesta nodded sagely. Indeed, for science. Before Zack could formulate a response, Astra's lips were on his. The kiss was electric, sending jolts of pleasure through his entire body. Her skin was cool to the touch, but her mouth was deliciously warm. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Zack's head spun, trying to process the surreal turn of events. That was, he gasped. Adequate? Astra asked, suddenly uncertain. Zack laughed. Are you kidding? That was amazing. Although, I might need another test, just to be sure. Astra's answering smile was radiant. I believe that can be arranged. As the night wore on, Zack found himself swept up in a whirlwind of passion and discovery. The princesses were eager to learn about human anatomy, and he was more than happy to provide hands-on lessons. Their own alien physiology proved endlessly fascinating, with erogenous zones in the most unexpected places. By the time the first light of Zenith's twin suns began to peek through the windows, Zack was exhausted but exhilarated. He lay tangled in silken sheets, Astra's head resting on his chest. "So," he murmured, stroking her emerald hair, "I guess this means I'm officially in the running for emperor, huh?" Astra propped herself up on one elbow, her expression serious. "Zack, you must understand. This changes everything. The other suitors will see you as a threat now, and there are those in the Galactic Senate who would rather see our bloodline die out than allow human DNA to enter it." Zack frowned. "Well, that sounds ominous, but hey, I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Interstellar war? Assassination attempts? Destruction of the entire empire?" Astra's silence spoke volumes. "Oh," Zack said weakly, "well, shit." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The door to their chamber burst open, revealing a panicked-looking Nova. "Astra! The Senate has called an emergency session. They're demanding Father nullify the contest and have the human executed immediately." Zack sat up, suddenly very awake. "I'm sorry. What was that last part?" Astra leapt from the bed, her regal bearing returning in an instant. "We must go to Father at once. Zack, stay here. You'll be safe in the royal quarters." "Yeah, about that," Zack said, already pulling on his clothes. "I think I'll tag along if it's all the same to you. Call me crazy, but I'd rather not sit around waiting to be executed." As they raced through the winding corridors of the palace, Zack's mind reeled. In the span of a single night, he'd gone from a bored barista to a pivotal figure in galactic politics, and now, it seemed, he was public enemy number one. Just another day in the life of Zack Ryder, apparent savior of an alien empire. God, he needed a coffee. As Zack and Astra raced through the winding corridors of the palace, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. Alarms blared, their shrill cries echoing off the crystalline walls. Guards rushed past, their alien features twisted with concern. "So," Zack panted, struggling to keep up with Astra's graceful stride, "is this a typical morning in the Galactic Empire, or am I just special?" Astra shot him a look that was equal parts exasperation and amusement. "This is far from typical, Zack. The Senate has never dared to challenge my father so directly before." They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Lunara and Celesta. The two princesses looked disheveled. "What in the name of the seven moons is going on?" Celesta demanded, her normally serene features clouded with worry. Astra quickly filled them in. Lunara's eyes widened in horror. "They want to execute Zack? But he's done nothing wrong. Except maybe commit high treason by sleeping with all four princesses," Zack muttered under his breath. Celesta overheard and raised an eyebrow. "I hardly think consensual relations qualify as treason, Zack. Though I must admit, your earth stamina is impressive." Zack felt his face flush. "Thanks, I think. Look, can we focus on the whole not getting executed thing?" Before anyone could respond, a booming voice echoed through the corridor. "Bring me the human." Zack winced. "I'm guessing that's Daddy Dearest." Astra nodded grimly. "We must go to him at once. Zack, whatever happens, let us do the talking. Father can be volatile when angered." "Great," Zack sighed. "From one temperamental boss to another. At least this one probably won't complain about me burning the espresso." The group hurried towards the throne room, the massive doors swinging open as they approached. Emperor Zoran sat upon his crystalline throne, all six of his arms gripping the armrest tightly. His iridescent scales shimmered with barely contained rage. "Father," Astra began, her voice steady despite the tension in the air, "we can explain—" "Silence," Zoran thundered. His multifaceted eyes focused on Zack, who fought the urge to shrink back. "You, human, do you have any idea what you've done?" Zack swallowed hard. Made some new friends?" A vein pulsed in Zoran's elongated forehead. "You have single-handedly thrown the entire galactic empire into chaos. The Senate is in an uproar. Our allies are threatening to sever ties. And my daughters—" He broke off, his voice choked with emotion. Your Majesty, Zack said, stepping forward despite the princess's attempts to hold him back. I know this looks bad, but I swear I never meant to cause any trouble. I saw how beautiful your daughters are and I couldn't understand why everyone else was treating them like they were hideous. Zoran's eyes narrowed. You truly find them attractive? Absolutely, Zack nodded emphatically. Where I come from, they'd be considered goddesses. The green skin totally works for them, and don't even get me started on those eyes. The Emperor leaned back, studying Zack intently. Curious. Very curious indeed. Perhaps. No, it's too outlandish to consider. What is, Father? Nova asked, speaking up for the first time. Zoran sighed heavily. There is an ancient prophecy, long dismissed as mere folklore. It speaks of a being from beyond the stars, one whose seed would rejuvenate our dying bloodline and usher in a new era of prosperity for the Empire. Zack blinked. I'm sorry. Did you just say seed? Because that sounds an awful lot like, the prophecy is real. A new voice rang out as the throne room doors burst open once more. A tall, willowy alien with luminous purple skin strode in, her arms laden with scrolls and data pads. Dr. Zilla, Zoran acknowledged the newcomer. What is the meaning of this interruption? The alien scientist dropped her load unceremoniously at the foot of the throne. Your Majesty, I've been analyzing the human's DNA. It's extraordinary. His genetic structure contains elements we've never seen before. Elements that could potentially stabilize and strengthen our own failing genome. A hush fell over the room. Zack looked from the princesses to the Emperor to Dr. Zilla, trying to process what he was hearing. So, let me get this straight, he said slowly. You're saying that my, seed could save your entire species? Dr. Zilla nodded enthusiastically. Precisely. The compatibility between your DNA and the royal bloodline is off the charts. It's as if your genetic code was specifically designed to complement ours. Zoran stroked his chin thoughtfully with 3 of his hands. This changes everything. If what you say is true, Dr. Zilla, then the human may be our salvation rather than our doom. Hang on, Zack interjected, a thought suddenly occurring to him. When exactly did you get a sample of my DNA to study? The princesses exchanged guilty glances. Lunara cleared her throat delicately. We may have taken the liberty of collecting a few samples during our encounter last night. Zack's eyebrows shot up. A few samples? Just how much did you collect? Enough, Dr. Zilla said briskly. Now, Your Majesty, I strongly recommend we begin a full-scale breeding program immediately. The fate of our species may depend on it. Whoa, 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 Zack held up his hands. Can we maybe pump the brakes on the whole breeding program thing? I mean, I just got here. I haven't even had breakfast yet. Astra placed a comforting hand on his arm. Zack, I know this is overwhelming, but you must understand the gravity of the situation. Our people are dying. You could be our only hope. Zack looked into her eyes, seeing the mixture of hope and fear swirling in their depths. He glanced at the other princesses, noting similar expressions on their faces. Even Emperor Zoran seemed to be holding his breath, waiting for Zack's response. I need some time to think, Zack said finally. This is a lot to process. Zoran nodded solemnly. Very well. You shall have 1 rotation of zenith to consider your position. But know this, human. The fate of an entire civilization may rest upon your decision. As if on cue, the throne room doors burst open once more. A group of stern-looking aliens in ornate robes swept in, their faces contorted with barely contained rage. Emperor Zoran, the lead figure bellowed. We demand an explanation for this outrage. Zoran rose to his full, impressive height. Senator Krax, he acknowledged the newcomer coolly. To what do we owe this interruption? Krax, a brutish creature with mottled green and brown skin, jabbed a clawed finger in Zack's direction. That abomination! We have received word that it has defiled the royal bloodline. This cannot stand." "Watch who you're calling an it, pal," Zack muttered under his breath. Zoran's eyes flashed dangerously. "Mind your tone, Senator. You forget yourself." "I forget nothing," Krax spat. "It is you who have forgotten your duty to the Empire. Allowing this primitive to soil our gene pool. It's an abomination." "Soil?" Zack couldn't help himself. "Look, I showered this morning. Mostly." Astra squeezed his arm in warning, but it was too late. Krax's attention snapped to Zack, his beady eyes narrowing with hatred. "You dare speak human," he snarled. "Your very presence here is an insult to our great civilization. I demand your immediate execution." The throne room erupted into chaos. The princesses moved to shield Zack, while Dr. Zilla frantically waved her data pads, trying to explain the importance of Zack's DNA. Senator Krax and his entourage shouted for blood, their voices rising to a fever pitch. "Silence!" Emperor Zoran's voice cut through the din like a laser. All eyes turned to the throne. "Senator Krax," Zoran said, his tone deceptively calm, "you overstep your bounds. The human is under my protection. Moreover, he may be the key to saving our dying race." Krax's jaw dropped. "Surely you jest, Your Majesty. This creature save us? Impossible." "Not impossible," Dr. Zilla interjected. "In fact, highly probable. My research indicates—" "Your research be damned!" Krax roared. "This is a perversion of nature. The Senate will not stand for it." Zoran's eyes flashed dangerously. "The Senate would do well to remember who rules this empire, Senator. I have made my decision. The human stays." A tense silence fell over the room. Krax's face contorted with barely contained rage. "This isn't over," he hissed. "The Senate will hear of this treachery." With that, he and his entourage stormed out of the throne room, leaving a wake of stunned silence behind them. Zack let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Well," he said weakly, "that could have gone better." Zoran sank back onto his throne, suddenly looking every bit his advanced age. "Indeed. It seems we have a fight on our hands, human." "Zack," he corrected automatically. "My name is Zack." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Very well, Zack. It appears that fate has thrust you into a pivotal role in our empire's history. The question is, are you prepared to accept it?" Zack looked around the room, taking in the hopeful faces of the princesses, the eager anticipation of Dr. Zilla, and the weary determination of Emperor Zoran. He thought of his life back on Earth, the monotonous job, the unfulfilling relationships, the general sense of aimlessness. Here, in this alien world, he had the chance to make a real difference, to save an entire civilization, to be a hero. Plus, there were the princesses to consider. 4 incredibly beautiful, intelligent women who actually seemed to like him. That wasn't exactly something to sneeze at. Zack took a deep breath. "Your Majesty," he said, squaring his shoulders, "I'm in. Whatever it takes to save your people, I'll do it." A collective sigh of relief echoed through the throne room. Astra beamed at him, her emerald skin practically glowing with happiness. "Excellent," Zoran said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Then let us begin. Dr. Zilla, you will oversee the breeding program. Ensure that all necessary precautions are taken." Dr. Zilla nodded eagerly. "Of course, Your Majesty. I've already drawn up plans for a rigorous schedule of—" "Whoa, hang on," Zack interrupted. "Can we maybe not call it a breeding program? It makes me feel like a prize stallion or something." Lunara giggled. "Would you prefer royal consort?" Zack considered this. "You know what? I can work with that. Zack Ryder, royal consort. Has a nice ring to it." As the group began to discuss plans and strategies, Zack couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. He was about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime, with the fate of an entire alien civilization resting on his shoulders and other parts of his anatomy. Just another day in the life of Zack Ryder, apparent savior of the Galactic Empire. God, he still needed that coffee. The weeks following Zack's appointment as royal consort flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Between diplomatic meetings with the princesses and endless briefings on galactic politics, Zack barely had time to catch his breath. But despite the chaos, he couldn't deny the thrill of his new life. One morning, as Zack stumbled bleary-eyed into the royal dining chamber, he was met with an unusual sight. All four princesses were huddled together, whispering excitedly. They fell silent as he approached, eyes gleaming with barely contained excitement. "Okay," Zack said, reaching for a steaming mug of what passed for coffee in the Empire. "What's going on? You ladies look like you're plotting galactic domination or something." Astra stepped forward, a radiant smile on her face. "Zack, we have wonderful news. All four of us. We're pregnant." The mug slipped from Zack's fingers, shattering on the floor. "I'm sorry. What?" Nova giggled. "You're going to be a father, Zack. 4 times over." Zack's mind reeled. He stumbled backwards, collapsing into a nearby chair. "But how? I mean, I know how, but all of you? At once?" Celesta nodded, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "It seems your Earth virility is even more potent than we anticipated. Dr. Zilla is ecstatic. She says the embryos are showing unprecedented genetic stability." That's great," Zack managed, his head spinning. "I think I need to sit down." "You are sitting down," Lunara pointed out helpfully. "Right, of course. I knew that." Zack took a deep breath, trying to process the news. "So, I'm going to be a dad to 4 half-alien babies, with 4 different mothers, who are all princesses, and I've known them for less than a month. Did I miss anything?" Astra placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We know it's overwhelming, Zack, but this is wonderful news for the Empire. Our children will usher in a new era of prosperity and peace." Zack nodded slowly, the reality of the situation beginning to sink in. "Yeah, you're right. This is good. Great even. I mean, sure, I'm probably going to need therapy for the rest of my life, but hey, small price to pay for saving a civilization, right?" The princesses laughed, their joy infectious. Soon, Zack found himself grinning along with them. It was crazy, sure, but then again, his entire life had become a sci-fi fever dream. Might as well embrace it. Their celebration was cut short by the sudden blaring of alarms. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber as guards rushed in, surrounding the group protectively. "What's going on?" Zack demanded, instinctively moving to shield the princesses. A holographic image of Emperor Zoran materialized before them. "We're under attack," he said grimly. "Senator Krax has staged a coup. His forces have breached the palace defenses." Zack's blood ran cold. "The babies," he said, looking at the princesses. "We need to get you somewhere safe." Astra shook her head. "We won't abandon our people, Zack. We must stand and fight." Before Zack could argue, the doors to the chamber burst open. Senator Krax strode in, flanked by a squad of heavily armed soldiers. His eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. "Well, well," he sneered, "the human and his brood mares. How convenient to find you all in one place." Zack stepped forward, anger overriding his fear. "Back off, Krax. You don't want to do this." Krax laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, but I do, human. Your abomination of a bloodline ends here. Guards, seize them." As the soldiers advanced, time seemed to slow for Zack. He glanced around the room, his mind racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but he'd be damned if he was going down without a fight. His eyes landed on an ornate tapestry hanging nearby. A crazy idea formed in his mind. "Hey, Krax," he called out, edging towards the wall. "You want to know why humans are the superior species?" Krax paused, curiosity momentarily overriding his bloodlust. "Enlighten me, vermin." Zack grinned. "We make great interior decorators." With that, he yanked hard on the tapestry. The heavy fabric came crashing down, enveloping Cracks and several of his guards. In the ensuing chaos, Zack shouted to the princesses, "Run!" They didn't need to be told twice. As Crax's men struggled to disentangle themselves, Zack and the princesses bolted from the chamber. They raced through the winding corridors of the palace, alarms blaring all around them. "We need to get to the escape pods," Astra panted as they ran. "There's a secret passage near the throne room." Zack nodded, his heart pounding. "Lead the way, Your Highness." They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. A group of Crax's soldiers blocked their path, weapons raised. "End of the line, human," one of them growled. Zack's mind raced. He spotted a control panel on the wall and had another ridiculous idea. "Maybe not," he muttered. Louder, he called out, "Hey guys, ever wonder what happens when you cross human ingenuity with alien tech?" Before anyone could react, Zack slammed his fist into the panel. Sparks flew, and suddenly, the gravity in the corridor reversed. Soldiers, princesses, and Zack himself were all sent floating towards the ceiling. "Okay," Zack admitted as he flailed in the air, "not my best plan." But the distraction worked. In the confusion, they managed to slip past the disoriented guards and continue their escape. After what felt like hours of near misses and improvised tactics, including a memorable moment where Zack used a priceless alien artifact as a makeshift bowling ball, they finally reached the secret passage. As they piled into an escape pod, Zack couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. "We can't just leave," he said. "What about your father? The Empire?" Celesta placed a hand on his arm. "We're not abandoning anyone, Zack, but we need to ensure the safety of the next generation. Our children are the future of the Empire now." Zack nodded, understanding the weight of their responsibility. As the pod blasted away from the palace, he watched the gleaming spires of Zenith fade into the distance. Whatever came next, he knew their lives would never be the same. The following weeks were a blur of narrow escapes and clandestine meetings. Zack and the princesses bounced from planet to planet, always one step ahead of Crax's forces. Along the way, they gathered allies, those still loyal to the Emperor and others who saw hope in the promise of a new, genetically reinvigorated royal line. Through it all, Zack found reserves of strength and ingenuity he never knew he possessed. He masterminded daring raids, negotiated with alien warlords, and even managed to hotwire a spacecraft using nothing but a hairpin and sheer determination. "You know," Nova remarked one evening as they huddled around a campfire on some backwater moon, "for a primitive species, you humans are remarkably adaptable." Zack grinned, warming his hands over the flames. "Thanks, I think. Though I'm pretty sure most humans would be curled up in the fetal position by now. I'm running on pure adrenaline and terrible decisions at this point." Lunara leaned against him, her swollen belly a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. "Your terrible decisions have saved our lives more times than I can count, Zack. Perhaps there's a method to your madness after all." As their rebellion grew, word spread throughout the galaxy of the human who had stolen the hearts of 4 princesses and fathered the next generation of imperial rulers. Some called him a hero, others a usurper, but no one could deny the impact he was having on the Empire. Finally, after months of guerrilla warfare and political maneuvering, they were ready to make their move. With a ragtag fleet of loyal supporters, they launched an assault on the imperial capital. The battle was fierce, but Zack's unorthodox tactics and the unwavering loyalty of their allies turned the tide. As they fought their way to the Senate chambers, Zack couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a former barista from Seattle, leading a charge to reclaim an alien empire. They burst into the Senate hall where Crax was holding court. The usurper's eyes widened in shock as he saw Zack and the very pregnant princesses at the head of the assault. "Impossible," Crax sputtered. "You should be dead 100 times over." Zack shrugged, a cocky grin on his face. "What can I say? Humans are notoriously hard to kill, Something about cockroaches and Twinkies, I think. As the room erupted into chaos, Zack seized the moment. He strode to the center of the chamber, his voice ringing out over the din. People of the Galactic Empire, I stand before you not as a conqueror but as a unifier. I didn't come here to steal your empire or destroy your way of life. I'm here to show you that our differences are not a weakness, but a source of incredible strength. The chamber fell silent, all eyes on the improbable human who had turned their world upside down. Look at me, Zack continued, gesturing to himself and the princesses. A few months ago, I was just another face in the crowd on a backwater planet. Now I stand before you, bonded to four of the most remarkable women in the galaxy, father to the next generation of imperial rulers. If that's not proof of the power of diversity, I don't know what is. Murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the crowd. Even some of Krax's supporters looked uncertain. We have a choice to make, Zack pressed on. We can cling to old prejudices and watch our civilization crumble, or we can embrace change and build a stronger, more united empire. The future is in our hands, all of our hands, regardless of species or origin. What say you? For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then, from the back of the room, a voice cried out, "Long live the Empire! Long live the human consort!" The cry was taken up by others, growing in volume until it became a deafening roar. Krax, seeing the tide turn against him, attempted to flee but was quickly apprehended by loyal guards. As the cheers washed over him, Zack felt a hand slip into his. He turned to see Astra smiling up at him, tears of joy in her eyes. "You did it, Zack. You saved us all." Zack shook his head, pulling her close. "We did it. All of us. Together." In the days that followed, the Empire underwent a rapid transformation. Emperor Zoran, who had been in hiding, resumed his throne with Zack and the princesses at his side. A new era of interspecies cooperation and understanding dawned. And at the center of it all was Zack Ryder, the unlikeliest of galactic heroes. His marriage to all four princesses was broadcast across the Empire, a symbol of the new unity they were building. As he stood before the altar looking at the four beautiful, green-skinned women who had changed his life so completely, Zack couldn't help but shake his head in amazement. "You know," he whispered to Astra as they exchanged vows, "when I woke up that morning in Seattle, I never imagined I'd end up here." Astra smiled, her eyes twinkling. "The universe works in mysterious ways, my love, though I must admit I'm curious. Do all humans adapt to intergalactic politics and multiple marriages so easily?" Zack chuckled. "Trust me, I'm as surprised as you are. But hey, when life hands you green-skinned alien princesses, you make cosmic lemonade," Lunara suggested, overhearing their conversation. "Exactly," Zack grinned. "Now let's go build an empire, right after I figure out how to change 4 alien diapers at once." As the ceremony concluded and the crowds cheered, Zack looked out over the sea of faces, human, alien, and everything in between. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the challenges they'd faced, and the incredible future that lay ahead. Just another day in the life of Zack Ryder, savior of the Galactic Empire, husband to 4 princesses, and soon to be father of the most genetically interesting children in the universe. God, he was going to need a lot more coffee. 11 years had passed since Zack Ryder's improbable ascension to galactic royalty, and the universe was still adjusting to the seismic shifts he'd set in motion. The Galactic Empire, once rigidly xenophobic, now stood as a beacon of diversity and acceptance. Zack slouched in his ornate chair in the imperial study, eyeing the steaming mug of coffee on his desk with desperate longing. He'd been trying to take a sip for the past hour, but the controlled chaos swirling around him made that simple task seem as daunting as negotiating interstellar peace treaties. "Dad, Zorak stole my quantum fluctuator again." A green-skinned boy of about 4 zoomed past, his feet barely touching the ground thanks to the anti-gravity boots he'd borrowed from the Royal Armory. Zack pinched the bridge of his nose. Zorak, give your brother back his, whatever that is. And Liam, no more anti-grav boots in the palace, remember? We're still repairing the ceiling from last time. A chorus of giggles erupted from behind a massive bookshelf. Zack peered around it to find 3 of his younger daughters engaged in what appeared to be an impromptu science experiment involving a potted plant and something alarmingly radioactive. "Girls," he said, trying to inject some authority into his voice, "what have we said about unsupervised fusion reactions?" The tallest girl, Stella, looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "But Dad, we're not unsupervised. Aunt Zilla is right here." Sure enough, the enthusiastic royal scientist poked her head out from behind the shelf. "Don't worry, Zack. I've got everything under control. We're just testing a new theory on photosynthesis enhancement," Zack groaned. "Zilla, we've talked about this. No more using the kids as lab assistants without running it by me or the wives first." Before Zilla could protest, a cacophony of wails erupted from the adjoining nursery. Zack's newest set of twins, barely a month old, had apparently decided it was time for their hourly screaming competition. As if summoned by the noise, Astra glided into the room, somehow managing to look regal despite the baby spit-up on her shoulder. "I've got them, love," she said, pressing a quick kiss to Zack's cheek. "You focus on your work. The Andromedan ambassador will be here in an hour." Zack nodded gratefully, turning back to the mountain of data pads on his desk. He just managed to focus on a report about dilithium crystal trade negotiations when a small hand tugged at his sleeve. "Papa," a little voice piped up, "is it true you used to make something called lattes before you saved the galaxy?" Zack looked down to see Luna, one of his middle children, staring up at him with curious eyes. He couldn't help but smile. "That's right, sweetheart. Your old man used to be a simple barista before all this." Luna's brow furrowed. "What's a barista?" "Well," Zack began, but was cut off by a sudden commotion from the hallway. The doors burst open, and in tumbled a tangle of limbs and laughter, his oldest children, now teenagers, fresh from their advanced combat training. "Dad!" exclaimed Orion, his eldest son, green skin flushed with excitement. "You should have seen it! I totally mastered the triple flip plasma blast combo." Nova, his twin sister, rolled her eyes. "Please, I perfected that move last week. But Dad, guess what? I hacked into the Regellian defense network in under 3 minutes." Pride swelled in Zack's chest, tempered with a hint of parental concern. "That's great, kids. Just remember, we only use our powers for good, right? No more pranking the Vulcan embassy." The teens exchanged mischievous glances that did little to reassure him. Suddenly, a holographic projection of Lunara appeared in the center of the room. "Zack, darling, don't forget we have that state dinner with the Berserk hive mind this evening, and Celesta needs you to approve the new intergalactic exchange program curriculum." Zack nodded, making mental notes. "Got it. Thanks, Han. Oh, and can you remind me to call my parents later? It's been a while since we've—" "Papa!" A chorus of young voices interrupted. A group of his middle children had gathered around him, eyes wide with excitement. "Are we going to visit Grandma and Grandpa this summer, or are they coming here?" Zack blinked, momentarily thrown by the sudden shift. Well," he stammered, trying to remember if they'd made any plans. Astra, returning from the nursery, saved him. "We haven't decided yet, little ones, but I'm sure we'll see them soon. Now, who wants to help me prepare for the Berserk dinner? We need to practice our telepathic etiquette." As the children scampered off, chattering excitedly about meeting the hive mind, Zack finally managed to take a sip of his now lukewarm coffee. He leaned back in his chair, surveying the controlled chaos of his study, and by extension, his life. 11 years ago, he'd been a directionless barista, drifting through life in Seattle. Now he was the linchpin of a galactic empire, husband to 4 incredible women, and father to the most genetically diverse and undoubtedly remarkable children in the universe. It was overwhelming, exhausting, and utterly insane. And yet, as he watched Nova patiently explaining quantum mechanics to her younger siblings, saw Orion gently breaking up a squabble between the twins, and felt the warm presence of Astra by his side, Zack realized something profound. He was happy. Truly, deeply happy. A tugging at his sleeve drew his attention downward once more. Luna looked up at him, green eyes sparkling. "Papa," she said seriously, "when I grow up, I want to save the galaxy too, just like you." Zack chuckled, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Oh, sweetheart," he said, "I have a feeling you and your siblings are going to do a lot more than just save the galaxy. You're going to transform it." As if to punctuate his words, a small explosion rocked the far corner of the study. Zilla's voice rang out, "Don't worry, that was supposed to happen, mostly." Zack sighed, setting down his mug and rising to his feet. Time to go see what new marvel, or mess, his brilliant, chaotic, wonderful family had created. Just another day in the life of Zack Ryder, former barista, savior of the Galactic Empire, and the luckiest man in the universe. He was definitely going to need more coffee. Dear listeners, well, you've made it to the end of this cosmic roller coaster. Congratulations on surviving the interstellar madness. I hope you enjoyed this tale of how one man's quest for a decent cup of coffee spiraled into saving an entire alien civilization. To those of you now eyeing your barista with newfound suspicion, relax. The chances of them being whisked away to become the savior of a far-off galaxy are, well, let's just say the odds are astronomical. But hey, stranger things have happened, right? I'd like to thank you for lending your ears, or whatever auditory organs you possess, to this ridiculous romp through the stars. Your willingness to embrace the absurd is what keeps storytellers like me churning out these wild yarns. And remember, the next time you're having a rough day, just think, at least I'm not trying to change 28 alien diapers while negotiating intergalactic peace treaties. Perspective is everything. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go check on my coffee maker. It's been making some suspiciously alien-sounding noises lately. May your own adventures be just as exciting, but perhaps with a little less political upheaval. Cosmic cheers, your slightly unhinged narrator P.S. If you happen to spot any green-skinned royalty in your local coffee shop, do let me know. I may need to warn Zack that the multiverse is leaking again.